Well, a new survey on American community life is not explicitly political in nature. However, it could prove valuable for operators on both sides of the aisle in regards to loneliness and social isolation. The survey arrives to some shocking conclusions about the, quote, friendship gap between college-educated and non-college educated Americans. Shockingly, since 1990, the number of Americans without a college education who have 5 or more close friends has fallen 30 percentage points down to just 37%. That's 10 percentage points lower than of college-educated Americans. Here to expand on the survey results is Daniel Cox, director of the Survey Center on American Life. Daniel, thanks for being with us.
Great to be here.
So, give us the top-line findings here. The survey shows that it's not, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, it's not that the two groups don't have overlapping friends, it's that Americans who are not college educated increasingly don't have friends at all? Is that what the result is?
Yeah, so we looked at a lot of different social outcomes, and across all these different measures, having close friends, having a social support system, being engaged in civic and social life in the community, so going to the library or a public park, even a cafe or a bar. On all these different measures, Americans who never went to college are just much less likely to do them than those with a college degree.
Why do you think this is? What is the reason for this? Is it because many people make friends from college and they keep those college friends lifelong? Is it because people without college degrees tend to work blue-collar jobs and they're working really hard and they don't have time, for friendship or money to go out with friends? Like, what is the reason for this?
Yeah, there's a number of deficits here that those without a college degree are facing. And what we found, and what I speculate is happening, is that we've seen a decline in civic and social infrastructure that was really important for all Americans, but it really was important for serving the needs of those without a college education. And I'm talking about marriage. We're seeing a decline in participation in marriage among those without college. It's basically fallen off a cliff over the last few decades. And the other really key one is religion. So we're also seeing, and we document this in the report, a decline in religious participation. And there's been, I think there's this kind of sense in the culture that more educated Americans are less religious, but we actually find the opposite when it comes to belonging to a religious congregation, that those with the degree are actually more likely to be members.
Are the results broken down? I would suspect that this is more dramatic for men than women. Is that the case, or did you look at that?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. Over the summer, we conducted a poll that was exclusively looking at friendship and then where people made friends, the type of friends that they had. And we identified that men, more than women, a lot more than women, were experiencing what we identified as a friendship recession. So between 1990 and today, the number of close friends that men had plummeted, while women declined a little bit, but were much better off. And it was not just on friends, but being social, having social support, expressing feelings of affection and being emotionally open. Like, again, women were much higher in all this stuff and getting more from their friendships than men were too. And so, so there's two parts of this. There's a part on gender, and this report focused on the increasing education divide.
And can you talk about how the coffee shop and the bar played into the thinking around this, and what role that plays in people's kind of general health in the community?
Sure. There's an idea in sociology. It was first identified by Ray Oldenburg that people have their home, which is their first place, their work, which is their second place, and then places out in the community, coffee shops, bars, libraries, community centers, that are third places they go when they're not at home or not at work. And these places are really important in tying communities together, giving people a sense of purpose and belonging, connecting people in different, who belong to different types of social groups. And so we looked at this and we found that college-educated Americans are much more likely to have a place in their community where they saw their neighbors and friends, and that because of this, they are much more likely to feel they belong in their community. They're more likely to trust their neighbors and just have an overall a more positive outlook about community life.
So obviously the pandemic, everybody's trapped at home or supposed to be social distancing, not seeing people. You can see there's obvious reasons that would make worsen a friendship recession. Is there any reason to think that would have had an even more pronounced effect on non-college educated Americans?
Yeah, I think this is absolutely the case. When it comes to forming friendships and maintaining social support, the workplace is actually really important. So if you lose your job through a pandemic or some other means, that effectively separates you from a lot of folks who were important in your life, you spend a lot of time with. Again, in a survey that we conducted over the summer, we found that the workplace was actually the most common place for people to form close friendships. So in some ways, Americans without a college degree have always been a little bit more socially vulnerable because their work lives are more easily disrupted. There's reams of government data showing that Americans without college degrees have higher turnovers in their jobs, longer periods of unemployment, and more likely to be unemployed. And because so much of our social lives now runs through the workplace, these kind of economic shocks that disrupt our employment can have equally devastating effects on our social lives.
I mean, one thing I've noticed anecdotally, at least, tell me if this is borne out in any of your research, is that women are really good at taking walks together. Men are so bad at taking walks together that they invented golf. So they could walk around. Men are better at meeting at a bar, watching a game together, doing something else so they're not facing each other, looking out, but they're still with each other. The pandemic shut a lot of that down. Do you think that had something to do with the gender effect that we saw throughout the pandemic?
Well, there's no doubt that women seem to be better at friendship than men, at least in the sort of superficial ways we can measure it in terms of maintaining social support, that kind of thing. And there's this idea, in the culture that, women conduct friendship face to face, men are shoulder to shoulder. So they're more likely to want to engage in sort of activities, whether it's watching the game or playing golf. And one of the things that we find in the survey, actually, that college educated Americans are actually more likely to have these kind of peripheral friends or weak ties. We call these place-based friendships. So there might be a gym buddy or someone that you just golf with or play poker with, and you only see in certain situations. But these weak ties are also really important. Again, there's a lot of research that shows that they increase our sense of well-being, reduce feelings of loneliness, and increase our sense of belonging.
I think money has a lot to do with it, to be honest. I think that a lot of people that are college educated, maybe they have white collar jobs, they have excess money, and they're able to go in and do things like play golf, which is expensive. A lot of people can't afford to do that, especially if they're working, low wage jobs.
Right, or you're working odd hours, right? So you have the graveyard shift, and it's really hard to find people that are on your same schedule that you can hang out with. And so I think that the new workplace was just not 9 to 5, but is increasingly kind of odd hours, or you don't know your schedule about a week in advance. It makes it really hard to develop and to spend time out in the community.
Very interesting stuff. Thank you so much for joining us, Daniel Cox.
It's my pleasure.
We'll be back with more Rising in just a minute.